All right, let's jump right into it today. We're tackling Wesele.
Wesele by Stanisława Wyspiańskiego.
That's right, a play that's a major work in Polish literature, and I think it's safe to say a lot of our listeners have maybe heard of it, but might not be super familiar with it.
Yeah.
And it's based on a real wedding, right? Like this is rooted in reality.
It is. It's based on a real wedding that took place in 1900 between a poet from the city, Kazimierz Przeżywa-Tetmajer, and a peasant girl from the village of Broniewicz. So we have these excerpts.
Yeah, I'm looking at these excerpts you sent over, and it's amazing. It's like this collision of worlds, right? You have the intellectuals, the artists, the city folk mingling with the rural folks.
Yeah.
And it all plays out against this backdrop of Poland under Austrian rule at the time.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the things that makes Wesele so fascinating. It's not just a play about a wedding. It's a play about Poland, about Polish identity, about the hopes and anxieties of a nation on the verge of potential change, you know?
Yeah, it's like he's holding a mirror up to Polish society at the time and saying, all right, who are we? Where are we going?
Exactly. And he's doing it in this incredibly vivid and theatrical way.
So let's start, I guess, with the setting. I mean, the play opens in this dimly lit room, right?
Yes.
And the stage directions are so specific. It's like we're right there with them. Bluish, whitewashed walls, humble furniture, religious imagery everywhere. What is Wyspiański doing with all this?
Well, I think he's establishing a very specific atmosphere right from the start. You know, this sense of both simplicity and a kind of underlying tension. The room itself is kind of a microcosm of Poland at the time. You know, this blend of the traditional, the rural, and then these hints of something else, something more modern, something a little bit unsettling.
Right, right. And it's interesting because you have these pictures of Polish historical figures like Chochoła hanging on the walls.
Yeah, the image of Chochoła, he's a legendary Cossack prophet who represents hope for national revival.
So right away we've got this sense of the past, of history weighing on the present. It's not just a wedding, it's a cultural event, you know.
Right, and I think those images are really important because they represent this yearning for a glorious past, you know?
For a strong and independent Poland.
Exactly. And that's something that's gonna, by layout throughout the play.
So let's talk about the characters then. We've got the poet, who's the groom. He's this city guy, this artist, very much an intellectual.
Right. Full of romantic ideas.
Yeah. And then we've got the bride. She's a peasant girl. You know, she represents this more traditional side of Poland.
And she's so young. And she's kind of innocent. There's a line where she says, "Buciki mam trochę śnieżne." My shoes are a bit tight.
Oh, yeah. There's like this tiny detail, but it just speaks volumes about her naivete, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Like here she is on her wedding day, and she's worried about her shoes.
Right.
And then you have the journalist who's this kind of cynical observer.
Right.
He's watching everything unfold.
He's a little bit detached, you know. He's there, but he's not fully a part of it.
Right. And then there's the host. He's the bride's father.
The father of the bride, yeah.
He's this peasant farmer, and he's really interesting because he's got this kind of conflicted perspective, right?
Yeah, he's proud of his heritage, you know. He's proud of being Polish, but he's also kind of struggling.
Yeah, he's got this line that really stood out to me where he says, "A what z nas pozostało, lalki, sobka, puder maski, farbowani fauz, obrazki." And this is what's left of us: puppets, a nativity scene, vile masks, painted falsehood, images. You know, it's like he's almost mourning the loss of something genuine in Polish culture.
Yeah, I think he feels like a lot of what he sees around him is just a performance.
Right, right. And it's interesting because, you know, we're talking about these characters, but they're not just individuals. They're kind of like these, like the archetypes, these symbols of different aspects of Polish society at the time.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes Wesele so powerful. It's not just a story about a wedding. It's a story about Poland itself.
Yeah, it's like this pressure cooker of history and culture and politics.
Right, right. All coming together in this one, chaotic event.
Yeah, and then on top of all that, we've got this mysterious figure of Chochoła, who shows up at the wedding.
Right.
And it's not even clear if he's real or not.
Exactly, and that's part of the mystery.
So we've got real people, we've got historical figures, and now we've got we've got this almost mythical character who's kind of like this embodiment of hope and uncertainty, right?
Right.
It's fascinating. And I'm already hooked. I can't wait to see what happens next.
Yeah. I think we've just scratched the surface.
Yeah, there's so much more to unpack here, so much more to explore.
Absolutely.
All right, well, we're gonna take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more of our deep dive into Wesele.
And we're back, diving deeper into Wesele, and it's getting even more interesting, because Chochoła, he's not not the only one making an appearance from the past.
Yeah, it's like Wyspiański saying the past isn't just over and done with; it's still very much alive in the present. These ghosts, these figures from Polish history, they're popping up all over the place.
And they're not just, spooky Halloween decorations. They each represent something, some aspect of Polish history or national identity. Take the Black Knight, for instance.
Oh, yes, so Zarny, a legendary figure, right? A symbol of Polish chivalry and military prowess.
Exactly. But he's also a reminder of a lost era of Polish power, a time when Poland was a major force in Europe.
So there's this bittersweet element to it, right? Like, oh yeah, he represents this great, glorious past, but it's gone. And there's this sense of longing, I guess, for what was.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. There's definitely a sense of nostalgia in the play,
For sure.
But there's also this awareness that the past can't be recreated.
Right.
You can't just, go back in time and relive those moments of glory. You have to grapple with the present. And I think that's what the characters are struggling with, especially those who come from different social classes. There's this tension, this awkwardness between them.
Oh yeah, like the poet and the bride, right? They come from completely different worlds.
Exactly. He's all about art and ideas.
Head in the clouds.
Right. And she's much more practical.
Down to earth.
Yeah, and there's this gap between them that's never really bridged, And
then you have the host. He's kind of caught in the middle.
Yeah, he's a fascinating character. He's proud of his peasant roots, but he also wants more for his daughter.
Right. He sees the appeal of the city, of the intellectual life, but he's also very aware of its limitations.
Yeah, he doesn't want to lose touch with the land, with tradition, and it's a really, really interesting conflict.
It is. And speaking of conflict, the journalist is there observing everything with his cynical eye.
Right. He's kind of like the audience,
Yeah, he's the one who's asking all the tough questions, like, what's the point of all this? Where are we going? What does it mean to be Polish?
Exactly. And he doesn't really provide any answers. He just observes and comments.
Which is interesting because you could argue that's exactly what Wyspiański's doing, right? He's not giving us a clear-cut message. He's just presenting this slice of life, this chaotic wedding, and letting us draw our own conclusions.
Yeah, I think that's a valid interpretation. He's not trying to tell us what to think. He's just showing us the world as he sees it.
But I also think there's something else going on too. It's not just about social class or national identity. There's also this exploration of gender roles.
Yes, good point.
I mean, Rachel, the Jewish woman who is fascinated with Polish culture but also remains apart from it.
Mm.
And then you have Marina, the host's wife.
Yeah, she's often overlooked.
She's more of a background figure, but she's still a very important character.
She's the one who's holding everything together. She's running the household. She's making sure the wedding goes smoothly.
And it's interesting to think about her in the context of the time period. Women didn't have a lot of power or agency.
Right.
But Marina, she's got this quiet strength.
Yeah, she's definitely a force to be reckoned with.
And I think Wyspiański is very aware of that. He's showing us that even in a patriarchal society, women can still find ways to exert their influence.
Absolutely. And it adds another layer to the play's exploration of identity. We're not just talking about national identity. We're also talking about gender identity, about individual identity.
So many layers. It's like an onion, this play.
Right. And we keep peeling back these layers and finding more and more complexity.
Exactly. It's so rich and rewarding. It's one of those plays that you can just keep coming back to and finding new things to appreciate.
Absolutely. Every time you read it, you discover something new.
Yeah, it's a masterpiece. All right, we're back. And things that we sell they're getting pretty intense. It's like all these underlying tensions are bubbling to the surface.
It's the third act, all the symbolic weight, the historical baggage, the social divisions, it's all coming to a head. And right in the middle of it, we have Chochoła.
Yeah. He shows up, gives the host this golden horn, and says, "Sound this at dawn." And then, poof, he's gone.
Vanishes, leaving everyone to wonder, okay, what was that about?
Yeah, I mean, on the surface, it seems like a pretty straightforward symbol, a call to action, rise up, fight for your freedom. But with Wyspiański, it's never that simple, is it?
Right. There's always another layer.
There's always something deeper going on.
So you have this horn that represents hope, but it also represents a burden, a responsibility.
A challenge. Like, okay, you've got this symbol, this potential weapon, but what are you going to do with it?
Exactly. And I think that's a really important question that the play is asking, not just of the host, but of all the characters and of the audience, too. What are we willing to do to fight for what we believe in? What sacrifices are we willing to make?
Big questions. And then you have this incredible scene between the journalist and the Tadachik.
Ah, yes, the court jester, the fool.
But he's not just a silly character, right? He's got this wisdom, this insight. He's the one who can speak truth to power.
And he does. He basically calls the journalist out for being all talk and no action, for being part of this intellectual elite that's detached from the realities of everyday life.
Ouch. Yeah, that's got to sting.
Yeah. But it's a necessary critique, It's a reminder that ideas are only as good as the actions they inspire.
And then after all this, after all these powerful speeches and symbolic gestures, we get that final scene, the Chochis dance.
The Shra figure leading everyone in this hypnotic, almost trance-like dance. It's a really, really powerful image.
Yeah, haunting almost. What's going on there?
Well, there are many interpretations, but I think one way to look at it is as a representation of Poland's paralysis.
Inability to move forward.
Right, trapped in these old patterns, these old ways of thinking.
Stuck in the past.
Exactly, and it's a very bleak ending. You have this sense that nothing's going to change, that Poland is doomed to repeat the same mistakes over and over again.
Doomed to just keep dancing,
Right, but on the other hand, I think there's also this glimmer of hope in the ending, because even though the characters are trapped in this dance, they're also together.
Connected.
Yeah. And maybe, just maybe, that sense of community, that sense of shared experience is the step towards something new.
Towards breaking free.
Exactly. So it's an open ending, It leaves us with more questions than answers.
Which is fitting, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, Wesele is not a play that gives you easy answers. It challenges you to think for yourself, to grapple with these complex issues of identity and history and politics.
And it remains incredibly relevant, even though it was written over 100 years ago.
Yeah, it speaks to these universal human experiences that we're all still grappling with today. So there you have it, folks. A deep dive into Wesele by Stanisława Wyspiańskiego. We hope you enjoyed it. It's a play that will stay with you long after the curtain falls.